You're watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. India attended the two-day summit on peace in Ukraine, which ended in Switzerland on Sunday, but joined a dozen other major countries of the global south in staying away from a joint communique. As per reports, Japan, a close Indian ally in business and security spheres, is all set to slap sanctions on companies from India as well as those from China, the UAE and Uzbekistan for allegedly circumventing anti-Russia sanctions. A disease caused by a rare flesh-eating bacteria that can kill people within 48 hours is spreading in Japan after the country relaxed COVID-era restrictions. The Israeli military has announced a tactical pause throughout daytime hours in parts of southern Gaza to free up a backlog of humanitarian aid deliveries destined for desperate Palestinians enduring a humanitarian crisis sparked by the war with Hamas. The Labour Party and the Conservative Party are on course for their lowest combined vote share since the Second World War, as the latest opinion poll for The Observer shows a shift away from the main parties. According to a CBS News report, the Biden administration is planning to offer work permits and deportation protections to illegal immigrants who marry to American citizens, provided they lived in the United States for at least 10 years. Well, our big focus. Nearly 80 countries have called for the territorial integrity of Ukraine to be the basis for any peace agreement to end Russia's two-year war. Some key developing nations at a Swiss conference did not join in. The joint communique capped a two-day conference marked by the absence of Russia, which was not invited. Many attendees expressed hope that Russia might join in on a roadmap to peace in the future. But on the second and final day of the summit, India decided to not sign the joint communique or any other document emerging from the conference. Pavan Kapoor from the Ministry of External Affairs, who led the Indian delegation at the summit, emphasized the use of dialogue and diplomacy as India's approach to achieving lasting peace in Ukraine. In fact, in his address, Ambassador Kapoor said that India will continue to work with all stakeholders that are committed to resolving the conflict. I'm quoting Ambassador Kapoor here. The decision of nations to opt out of Ukraine declaration has cast a shadow over Ukraine President Zelensky's bid to broaden support in the war against Russia's invasion. About 100 countries took part in the conference, but Russia, as I mentioned, was not invited, and China actually snubbed the event. But besides India, other nations which stayed away from the final communique, they included South Africa, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, Mexico, Armenia, Libya, Indonesia, Bahrain, Colombia, as well as the UAE. Now, all of NATO, small islands in the Pacific and Indian Ocean, and countries under the US military umbrella in Asia signed this communique.
India shares the global concern over the situation in Ukraine and supports any collective desire to facilitate a peaceful resolution of the conflict. India's participation in the Summit on Peace in Ukraine, as well as in the preceding NSA political director level meetings based on Ukraine's peace formula, is in line with our clear and consistent approach that enduring peace can be achieved only through dialogue and diplomacy.
The format of the summit is absolutely working, and I thank you all for that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Dear colleagues, all those present, now we see that we all made the right choice. The choice of two security and one humanitarian points to start moving towards the restoration of full security and a just peace.
Well, as India says, it does not associate itself with any communique or document emerging from the summit, asserting only those options acceptable to both parties can lead to abiding peace. Well, for further clarity, we have with us former diplomat J.K. Tripathi. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the World 24/7. We are well aware that thousands of troops and civilians have been killed in Ukraine in the war that has been raging for 2 years now. Is it a fair assessment that India remains sympathetic towards Ukraine, but obviously cannot go against Russia because of its dependencies?
Hello.
Sir, am I audible to you?
Raise the voice, raise the volume.
Right, our team is just working on raising the audio at your end. Right, sir. Am I audible to you?
Yes, now. Okay.
Sir, is it a fair assessment that India remains sympathetic towards Ukraine, but obviously cannot go against Russia because of its dependencies?
You see, this statement cannot be said to be at the behest of Russia or any other country. Because simple reason is that if two countries are at war with each other, and then there is any conference to tackle the issue, to resolve the issue, then certainly both countries should be invited for that. Both countries should participate in discussions, debates, its deliberations, etc., so that then a consensus or then an agreement can come. But in this situation, more than 80 countries participated in the debate, in the conference, but Russia was not invited, not even a delegation of Russia. Right? Maybe you are trying to accuse, or you are accusing Russia of genocide or whatever, but the fair play demands that if there are two parties, then both parties should be invited for the dialogue, and only then something can be achieved. But here in this case, it was not done. So certainly our representative, Mr. Pawan Kapoor, was very much right when he said that India continues to believe that such a resolution requires a sincere and practical engagement between the two parties. And he told that we'll continue to remain engaged with all stakeholders as well as the warring parties. So,
Sir,
I don't think anything exceptional or anything bad in this statement.
right, though Ukraine's
Yes,
argument, of course, has been it's not genocide or whatever. That's something that they have vociferously advocated at different stages on the international stage as well. Meanwhile, China has declined to attend that conference. We know Beijing, their risky strategy, many experts argue, is to sabotage Western-led peace proposals and then swoop in and use its leverage over Russia to broker its own peace deal. Does this seem like China's strategy?
pardon?
Does it seem?
Can you come?
Am I
Can you
audible
come
to you,
again?
sir? Right.
Your voice, there is some echo. Yeah, please go. Can you come again?
Right, we apologize on our end if there's any technical glitch, but China, as we know, declined to attend the conference. Many say that Beijing's risky strategy is to sabotage Western-led peace proposals and then swoop in and use its leverage over Russia to broker its own peace deal. Do you think this seems like their strategy?
Well, it might be, because China is known to back Russia on all the international forums and regional forums. So China is correct in declining to join, because China is a party of that. But for India, we are not a party to any of the warring nations. So we attended. We have, in fact, we have attended all the three previous conferences on Ukraine, which were held in Copenhagen, in Jeddah, and then in Malta and Davos, four. So we have attended all those four, because we don't shy off from attending the conferences. But deliberations should be, we did not sign a communique. We did not want to be part of the communique because it is lopsided. But we should, after the consultation, had Russia been invited for this conference, certainly it would have been, we would have joined that. We would have been a part of the community, but this is not that. Yes, ma'am.
Meanwhile, what perhaps is worse for Kiev is that even its staunchest ally, the United States, did not send its own head of state, with Joe Biden opting to attend a campaign fundraiser in California and Hollywood instead. Zelensky was clearly not impressed. He had clearly said that Biden's absence would be met with a personal standing applause by Putin in Moscow.
You are talking about the fundraising for Ukraine in USA?
No, I'm talking about a separate campaign fundraiser that the US president attended in Hollywood instead of being at the summit.
Well, that is not anything that we can comment on, because fundraising by US president who is accused or who is convicted or who is being charged, that hardly matters, because in USA the candidate need not be even if a candidate is charged or accused, or even if a candidate is convicted or
So
convicted.
it's about the significant optics though, right? The US president was not at this peace summit, yet he attended a campaign fundraiser in Hollywood. I guess we're talking about the significance of the optics here. But again,
because obviously, because it is the question of political life and death for Biden and in the election year, and he would have known what is the outcome going to be. So he very much decided to skip it and attend the fundraising.
well, let's see what this event, whether it has any impact on the conduct of the war, especially in the near term. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us with those quick comments. Well, the summit is not the first of its kind, though. Several other lower-level meetings have been held over the last year in which Ukraine has promoted its 10-point peace plan, calling for the full withdrawal of Russian troops and the restoration of its territorial integrity, among other conditions. But unfortunately, the events have had little impact on the battlefield. However, other than to emphasize Ukraine's need for more weaponry from its allies, fighting remains as the intense war rages on. Meanwhile, according to reports, Japan, a close Indian ally in business and security spheres, is all set to slap sanctions on companies from India, as well as those from China, the United Arab Emirates and Uzbekistan for allegedly circumventing anti-Russia sanctions. A member of the four-country Quad Alliance, along with India, Japan, has actually opted to hew closer to the American position on Ukraine by penalizing companies from the four countries that have done business with Russia. In case of the Israel war in Gaza, it has been sanctioning activists of Hamas and Hezbollah, the militants of those groups. The chief secretary of the Japanese government, Yoshimasa Hayashi, actually said at the recent G7 summit, "We have announced that we are considering a new package of sanctions that will include companies from third countries." In fact, she added that we're looking at measures against companies from China, India, the UAE, and Uzbekistan. According to Hayashi, the Japanese government is currently coordinating the details of the new sanctions package against the Russian Federation and will release the details very soon. But companies from Kazakhstan could also be added to the list being prepared by the Japanese government. But like India, Japan has also heavily invested in Kazakhstan, especially in uranium mining. In other crucial news, ever since Japan started issuing e-visas for Indian tourists, we have seen a surge in the number of Indians visiting the country. And if you happen to be one of them, this demands your attention. Did you know about the existence of a rare bacteria that actually feeds on flesh that can, as per reports, claim a human life in under 48 hours? Well, according to the latest updates coming in from Tokyo, Japan is battling a disease caused by this rare bacteria. In fact, the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention states that streptococcal toxic shock syndrome is a rare but serious bacterial infection. It can develop very quickly into a life-threatening emergency, and the treatment actually focuses on managing low blood pressure and multiple organ failure. But STSS often results in complications from organs shutting down and the body going into shock. Complications can include needing surgery to remove infected tissue or limbs to control the infection. But the CDC warns that even with treatment, STSS can be deadly. In fact, out of 10 people with STSS, as many as 3 people will die from the infection. Now, cases of streptococcal toxic shock syndrome, the disease caused by rare flesh-eating bacteria, is on the rise in Japan as per a Bloomberg report, while as many as 941 cases of STSS were reported in the country in 2023. That number of cases, till the 2nd of June, it stands at a record 941 this year. This is what Bloomberg clearly states. The data was attributed to the National Institute of Infectious Diseases, which has been reportedly tracking incidences of the disease since the turn of the century. Now, streptococcal toxic shock syndrome, it carries a mortality rate of 30%, and Tokyo is bracing for as many as 2,500 cases by the end of this year, as per Bloomberg. According to the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, it is people aged over 50 who are most vulnerable to this bacteria. Now, anyone can actually get STSS, but some factors can increase the risk of getting it. People with an open wound are at increased risk. People with diabetes or alcohol use disorder, previously known as alcohol dependence, are also at increased risk for STSS. But I must highlight that the CDC says it is very rare for someone with STSS to spread the infection to other people. With that, let's turn our attention now to the United Kingdom. The Labour Party and the Conservatives are on course for their lowest combined vote share since the Second World War, as the latest opinion poll for The Observer shows a shift away from the main parties. With all the parties having now unveiled their election manifestos, Labour has maintained a dominant 17-point lead over the Tories, with less than 3 weeks to go until polling day. However, Reform and the Lib Dems are up 2 points each. It is a reversal of the trend seen at the last election, when the main parties were actually able to squeeze the support of their smaller competitors. But according to opinion research, support for the smaller parties dropped 10% between the first and last poll in the 2019 campaign. So far, though, the total vote share for smaller parties is up 5 points this time around. Well, with 20-point poll leads, historic strength on all the polling indicators, a flailing opponent fighting for the third place, and yet still the Labour Party worries, it is no wonder. But to better understand the electoral challenges in the run-up to the UK general election, we have with us the Labour candidate for Harrow East, Primesh Patel. Thank you so much, Mr. Patel, for joining us on the World 24/7. Well, the Tories, languishing in the polls for now, seem to be choosing to zero in on attacking your leader, Keir Starmer, as they try to spook voters into stopping a Labour landslide. Rishi Sunak is confident that he will beat the anti-incumbency and be voted back to power. But is your party geared to meet the challenge?
What I would say is absolutely, Labour Party is completely ready to form the next government of the United Kingdom. The sense we're getting on the doorsteps here in Harrow East are that people are ready for change. People are very sick and tired of 14 years of Conservative Party chaos. They see a country that hasn't really moved much for the better, if at all, in the last 14 years. And the feedback I'm getting on the doorstep is that people do want to get rid of the current Prime Minister, the current administration, and usher in a decade of renewal and change with Labour.
Well, Mr. Patel, migration has been a key focus as far as this election is concerned. Your party says it will immediately scrap the Rwanda scheme and divert £75 million from it to a new border and security command. But will it really make a difference, or is it just rebranding?
The two policies are completely and radically different. So the Rwanda scheme, which you mentioned, which is the Conservative initiative, is a completely unworkable vanity scheme. Whereas the Labour proposal for the Border and Security Command is a serious proposal to take control of British borders in an ordered, legal and compassionate way. The Rwanda scheme will only deal with 1% of illegal asylum seekers, and at the moment the United Kingdom spends £8 million a week on housing illegal migrants waiting for processing. So what we want to do is deal with this issue of migration and particularly illegal migration in a compassionate way, but in a way that does deal with the situation at hand. It is critical that we deal with the issue and not skate around it. So our proposals are very much to stop the chaos, go after the criminal gangs who trade in driving the crisis, and the new Border Security Command will have hundreds of investigators, intelligence officers, cross-border police officers, and it will be funded by ending the wasteful scheme that you mentioned with Rwanda.
You know, when I was speaking to your Shadow Trade Secretary about a fortnight ago, he had clearly mentioned that there are no plans that the Labour has to abolish the graduate route visa scheme. But would the Labour Party work towards allowing the graduate route visa scheme to continue post the 4th of July?
So the graduate migration, is something that will be part of the overall policy that we look at when we talk about immigration. But we have obviously committed to bringing down overall immigration levels. Now, graduates form a particularly important source of migration to the United Kingdom, but they are very much valued. Our universities, benefit from having graduates attend our universities. So we want to ensure that we continue with that. But our focus will be very much on cutting any abuse in the system where it does exist. So where we have people attending colleges that aren't particularly real or fake, our focus will be on tackling that aspect of graduate migration. We don't want to in any way disincentivize all the wonderful students that come to British universities to learn. It enriches both us and those countries that those students come from. So it is very much an important part of our welcoming culture to have as many students as want to come to our universities, but in a fair, controlled manner, using the appropriate processes that we have in place.
Well, Mr. Patel, many say successive Tory PMs have put aside qualms over Narendra Modi in the pursuit of boosting trade with India. Now, Prime Minister Modi is now steering the third term. How does your party see his appointment as Prime Minister for the third time? And where do you see India-UK relations under a Labour dispensation in the UK?
So, absolutely critical to our future as a country. So it's something is actually, if you look at page 122 of the Labour Party manifesto, which was just released a couple of days ago, we actually mention India specifically in our manifesto, and we make it very clear that we want, that is to say, a Labour government, United Kingdom under a Labour government. We want a new strategic partnership with India, focusing on many areas. But we certainly recognise the importance of India to the United Kingdom, and we hope that will be a mutually beneficial relationship, particularly given our people-to-people contacts. You can probably tell from my surname, I am of Indian origin myself, and I'm very proud to be one of many Indian origin parliamentary candidates that are standing for the Labour Party at this election. I think the largest number ever. So we will certainly be pushing for strong relationships between the United Kingdom under a Labour government and India under Mr. Modi.
Right. Also, many would say forget Rishi Sunak. Tory strategists are completely obsessed with Keir Starmer. In fact, the Conservative Prime Minister is conspicuously absent from the party's social media ads. But what do you have to say to those who are branding Keir Starmer as a robot and Sir Sleepy?
Okay, so what I would say to that is that I personally believe that our politics deserves better than insults and name calling, and it's a shame that that is where the Conservatives seem to have gone now. And if that's all they got, then I think it shows that we are more serious as a political party in the Labour Party. Our manifesto that I mentioned that we released 2 days ago is a serious offer to the country. It's an opportunity for hope and change for our country. We've had 14 years of chaos, and we need to change track for our country. What we've got is an ambitious program to get back to economic growth and get hope and opportunity for the next generation. It's the change that our country so desperately needs. And from my door knocking here in Harrow East, the British people know the cost of Tory chaos. They want alternative to it, not a repeat of it. So that's why we're taking a different approach to the Conservatives, where we've got a positive message about hope for our country, the change that we can offer. everything we offer is fully costed, fully funded, credible to turn the country around after 14 years of Tory chaos. So the choice is clear at the election. It's 5 more years of Conservative chaos with the current government, which will mean higher mortgages, higher bills, or stability with a changed Labour Party to end that chaos so that we can turn the page and really rebuild Britain. So it's time for change, in my view.
Right, Mr. Patel, thank you so much for joining us on The World 24/7, and here's wishing you good luck for the 4th of July. News and updates continue in a moment. We're sitting into a very quick break for now. Welcome back. Now, according to reports, the Biden administration is planning to offer work permits and deportation protections to illegal immigrants who marry to American citizens, provided they lived in the U.S. for at least 10 years. Now, this proposal, known as parole in place, would also open up a pathway to permanent legal status and U.S. citizenship for some beneficiaries by removing an obstacle in U.S. law that prevents those who enter the U.S. illegally from obtaining green cards without leaving the country. In other news, in a brazen daylight robbery, a group of 20 thieves targeted an outlet of Pune-based P&G Jewelers in California, looting a significant amount of jewelry. Now, the CCTV footage you see on your screen shows a large group of masked individuals storming the store in Sunnyvale area before fleeing in multiple vehicles, wielding sledgehammers and shattering display cases. The police there have arrested 5 men in this case. Well, thank you so much for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. We keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.